Okay, in this video, let's have a look at the basics of electrolysis then. So the setup, if you remember, we need to have a power supply that is going to be a direct current power supply, okay? And the power supply they're connected to two electrodes. So here I'm going to have, this is one of my electrodes, okay? And here is my other electrode. And these electrodes we're going to call the cathode and the anode. I'm going to come back to explain why in just a moment. The electrodes are often made from graphite, carbon. You should know why, because we need these to conduct electricity. Graphite is a non-metal, but it conducts electricity. And you should remember that that's because the carbon structure inside it forms 3 bonds per carbon atom. Therefore, it's got a spare electron that's delocalized and can conduct. Okay, so we have, just to recap, power supply, DC, wires connecting to two electrodes, and the electrodes sit inside this container, and this container contains my electrolyte. Okay, in this example here, my electrolyte, remember this means the ions are loose, is going to be sodium chloride, and I've made it molten so the lattice is broken down and the ions are loose. And here it's going to be loads of ions in, but I'm going to use just a few to make it easy. In my example, here's my two of my ions examples that are now loose and able to move around. So when I flick the power on, these ions are going to be attracted to an electrode. Now, to help us understand which one they get attracted to, let's just have a look at this. This is the sodium ion, and it's positive. And a name in chemistry for a positive ion is called a cation. So the cation is a positive ion. Okay, so the cation is a positive ion. And the cations go to the cathode. That's why it's called the cathode. So they are going to migrate, that just means move, in that direction. So cations are attracted to the cathode. Great to remember that. If you had the youth go to the youth club. That's why it's called a youth club, because that's where the youth go to. Old age pensioners go to an old age pensioners club because that's where they go. So cations go to the cathode, okay? Now think about what this means. If this is a positive ion and it's being attracted to the cathode must have a negative charge because opposites are going to attract each other. So the cathode is negative and it attracts the cations, which are positive, okay? Opposite, the anode. Well, the anode is where the chloride ions are going to migrate. Again, just means move. So they're going to move towards the anode. Why do they do that? Well, chloride ions are anions, okay? To help you to remember this, I always write the word anions with a capital N there to help me remember they are negative ions, okay? So these are negative ions and they head towards the anode. Therefore, the anode, if it's going to attract negative ions, must be positively charged in order to attract those ions, okay? So anions go to the anode, cations go to the cathode. If you want a way to remember the cations, cats and positive, I love them, okay? So you've got cats and positive, I love them, and anions with the N in for negative ions, they go that way. So that's the basic setup. We're then going to have a look in a second, next part of the video, is to what happens to these ions once they've migrated to the electrodes.